So, it's been a while since I made my Christmas special. We are talking about that now, since only 3 days before that, I made a video on Half-Life. There's a reason for me talking about the two expansions for Half-Life, Opposing Force and Blue Shift. Now, instead of at a later date, I'll elaborate more in my next video. Both of these expansions were made by Gearbox Software. I know that Gearbox Software leaves a sour taste in all of our mouths, and for good reason. However, these two expansions for Half-Life are, spoilers, really fucking good. So apparently Gearbox can make games and also make good games. A 2-in-1 grand slam. One day I'll most definitely talk about some bad Gearbox games and some inferior Gearbox remasters. However, today I will be celebrating two of their great accomplishments, which are the Half-Life expansions. Well, let's get started. Before starting, I'm using the Steam version of Op4. I'm playing on hard, which is the gentleman's way to play Half-Life. No, it's not. I will only rarely use quick saves. In total, I'm thinking less than 10 I actually used. Last rule, have fun. This is by far the most important rule about any game. You are Corporal Adrian Shepard. You have been sent into the Black Mesa facility to help contain the incident that happened. We all know what that incident is. However, you never receive your mission orders. First, however, you receive some training. Okay, so at least they put some thought into making this. Personally, I think this training is much better than the original Half-Life Hazard course. Taking from the Holy Bible of Full Metal Jacket, you go through a military installation and are put through some challenges in the loosest definition, while being degraded by all of the officers. I find this less helpful for the actual game, but way more fun and interesting than the Hazard course. This one just doesn't take itself seriously. Also, the best joke put into a Gearbox game is in this training. You absolute fuck. Classic. The Desert Eagle, which replaces the Magnum, is introduced here, and it sucks. Unless you turn on the laser sight, then it is functionally identical to the Magnum. Randy, was that you? Okay, the sniper rifle is actually really good. Objectively better than the crossbow, only with less ammo. It's a hit scan this time, instead of the crossbow's projectiles. Stop, baby! I'm such a child. It has a really long range, and I don't think that it ever runs out of usefulness after you get it. The G-Man is shown in some spots, pulling the strings over at the military installation. If only Valve would focus on making new games that fans want, instead of long-awaited revivals that are also prequel, and also VR only. I heard it was good, but that still doesn't excuse the fact that it took 13 years of waiting for a fucking bitch slap in the face with a VR only prequel. Maybe if the Half-Life series is continued, we might end up finding out what happens to poor old Adrian Shepard. Also, a weird quirk that is in Op4. If your frame rate is above 100 FPS, then the ropes don't work properly. Anyways, that part comes later. First, we need to meet the engineer. No, not that one. The engineer that can break through the doors with his blowtorch, that is no joke, lit with his cigar. He lights his blowtorch with his cigar. Awesome. The training ends with learning how to interact with the radio. Disappointing ending, I know, but the training in opposing force is the best it gets. So, when you first start up Op 4, that's what I'll call the game from now on, you have a helicopter ride similar to the helicopter rides from Predator and uses lines from the movie, and also seems to be referencing the dropship scene from Aliens as well. Not so long story short, you never receive your orders and your helicopter crashes. You are eventually rescued by a scientist at Black Mesa, thus starting Op 4. I think that Op 4 has a really strong, arguably the best start to any Gearbox game. I will absolutely be trashing Gearbox in later videos, but I'll go easy on them this time, since these expansions, especially Op 4, are really just that good. Sometimes I like to think that the real Half-Life 2 is Op 4. I'll talk more about that when I get to Half-Life 2. You start off in the Black Mesa facility after being rescued by a scientist. You get to see the new enemy through a glass window. Just kidding, that's a zombie reskin. However, you do get to meet Otis. Otis is an absolute lad, the best guard at Black Mesa by far. You get your first weapon, which is the wrench. It attacks slower than the crowbar, but can be charged up for a more powerful attack. This attack is useful for zombies, that's about it. Your mission currently is to move through the Black Mesa facility and find out what your mission is. First is a Gearbox laser puzzle. Then, you need to go switch off the power. Oh no, God really is dead. You will never be forgotten, poor Otis. At this point, you've acquired a few weapons, the previously mentioned wrench, the knife, and the Desert Eagle. Pro tip, always have the laser sight on. I don't know why it's so inaccurate without having the laser sight on, since there isn't even a downside to having it on. You get to go through the sewer system after talking to this soldier on the radio. Oh, and also rescue a trapped robot. I swear this jump onto the tram always makes me nervous. So, you get to be on a tram for a short amount of time before acquiring the pistol and getting gangbanged by a couple Vortigaunts. Oh hey Otis, trying to get some candy? How about helping your old pal Adrian out and killing some monsters up ahead? Oh, and also, open this door that I need. Unfortunately, Otis, this means your usefulness has run out. Normally I wouldn't actually kill him, however on hard I need all of the Desert Eagle ammo I can get. Okay, so I finally reached this Marine saying that famous line from Surface Tension.
Come in, Cooper. Do you copy? Forget about Freeman. We're abandoning the base. If you have any last bomb targets, mark them on the tactical map. Otherwise, get the hell out of there. Repeat, we are pulling out and commencing airstrikes. Give us targets or get below.
Hey, now that's a nice machine gun, sir. I know that you don't have to kill this guy to get in the closet, but I still will. G-Man, open the door! G-Man, you bastard! So you have been left behind. Your objective now is to escape the Black Mesa facility. You're pretty much on your own from now, with the occasional HECU grunts showing up. Unfortunately, their AI goes from decently good to absolutely broken. Early on in Op 4 is not that hard. This chapter is objectively the second easiest in the entire game. Did I mention that I'm playing on hard? So this fact won't really come into play until certain enemies show up. One new Zen enemy is the Gnome, which is a larger zombie that throws projectiles at you and occasionally runs at you. New enemies also show up that I initially thought were part of Zen. However, these aliens are part of a totally different faction called Race X. I didn't really comment on the earlier part where the shock trooper showed up briefly. Not much I had to say about that. The pit drones are the ones that are introduced in this area. They're usually easy, however they can be devastating on hard, especially with the close-up melee attacks. Alright, so for this rope part, you will be okay if your frames per second is over 100. Doesn't matter that much. However, in the section where you have to parkour on the ropes, you'll be absolutely fucked. I think that moving a box through 3 goddamn areas might be a little excessive. However, you finally get to meet up with some friendly soldiers. The engineer is the most important, since he gets you through this door and into this elevator, yet this other dumb soldier decides not to follow me into the elevator. I tried everything, but he does not cooperate. So I abandon him, and only then does he try to get into the elevator. Op 4 AI sometimes is just plain awful. Not like Half-Life 2's is any better. After the elevator fiasco, I killed these Vortigons without the engineer since I wanted to keep him alive to get me into this room. This room didn't have that much stuff and was not worth discovering at all. This office area reminds me like a brighter version of Office Complex. This is also the last appearance of the alien grunt, since they are later replaced by the shock troopers, a change that I would not have made to this. I think that the overall section is good. You get to meet up with a medic and see that the Black Ops that were sent in are actually there to kill you, since the HECU grunts apparently are just that bad at cleaning things up. They tortured this engineer who I have to bring a medic to, so that the engineer can cut through this door and then die. Oh, that's a nice gun. Hopefully you don't lose it somehow. Okay, so the next room seems to give people the most trouble, and understandably. It's not that hard, unless you decide to go running guns blazing. Stand back and let your friends go in and probably die since we're playing on hard. Then, lure the Black Ops female assassins away and then lead them into trip mines or other explosive traps. So I ended up clearing up that room really easily. You can run into that room on medium or easy guns blazing, just not hard. That's a general rule for Half-Life on hard. You can't run into every single situation and expect to survive. Hard is not meant for a first-time playthrough. That would be medium. Medium is objectively the most fun and probably the best overall way to play. However, just choose which difficulty is best for you, and that is the way that you should play. More Black Ops show up in the form of the reskinned HECU grunts, and they're pretty easy unless you get gangbanged by 3 or more of them. Most of this chapter is facing the Black Ops, which is of course why it is called Friendly Fire. Unpopular opinion, I think that Op 4 should have been Half-Life 2. This machine gun that I mentioned earlier, the Saw, is probably one of the best weapons in a Half-Life game. I do like playing Half-Life 2 and I like how it continues the story. However, the weapons have about as much ammo as brain cells, a person that thinks the Timeless Child was a good idea and expanded the Doctor Who lore. If you didn't get it, that means that they don't have any ammo. Back to Op 4, I'll talk about Half-Life 2 in a later video. Adrian has faced many Black Ops at this point when he gets into a rail car, which is not an entire chapter like On a Rail. Gearbox may have made the 20th Anniversary World Tour edition of Duke 3D, but at least they knew better than to make On a Rail 2.0. This chapter is the shortest in the game, which you'd think would mean that I'd be safe from stupidity. You get to see Gordon Freeman before going into that same room that teleported him to Zen. If you go into the teleporter, you then fall and die. I made a quick save here, marking my first quick save of this run, mainly since I wanted to show you what happens when entering that teleporter. Instead, I died to the machine. Then, in the best version of Zen ever, you get the displacement gun, or the displacement cannon. You can teleport yourself out of Zen and into the hazard course? Okay. Then, you get teleported back to Zen. Here's a quick little montage of Gmod DW sucks at platforming. This is the underwater chapter. Actually, it's more like you're inside a base located underwater. However, the underwater chapter sounds better. Lots more of the enemies from Race X show up, and they show up a lot more from now on. The Ichthyosaur makes its 3 appearances in opposing force in this chapter, and these encounters can and should be skipped altogether. Just swim past them. The Shock Trooper makes its first proper appearance. These enemies are sometimes a bitch to fight. I'll get more into that later. For now, I pick up the shock roach that jumps at you. You can pick up the first one. The other ones just damage you. Funny, I used to think that this chapter was longer, but now I realize how fast it is when you know where you're going. I think that the reason this chapter is called Vicarious Reality is because you find out that the scientists have been experimenting on the new aliens again. The new enemy from Race X shows up, the Voltigor. They would be a bitch to fight if I didn't have the Alt F4 cannon. The BFG can be really useful in this expansion, and sometimes even save your life. Wait, what? There is an emphasis in this chapter of how Zen has been being fused with parts of the Black Mesa facility. This is mainly seen through observational areas that you have to traverse through. The Spore Launcher is also acquired in this chapter, and it is really good weapon. I have never used this on normal, but after playing on hard I see how useful it can be, especially against the Black Ops. Feeding it to reload is cute, and it's one of those only weapons that is actually alive. The ammo for this thing is these green balls that grow out of some plant. The next weapon, if you can even call it that, is the Barnacle. This mainly acts as a grappling hook, but it can also be used to kill things. This section makes me realize how much more I use snarks in the original game compared to Op 4. In the conclusion of this chapter, you get this radio transmission requesting backup that sounds almost similar to a scene from Die Hard that I can't play without being struck down by the YouTube gods.
X-Ray Zulu, are you there? We need backup in the waste sector. It's some sort of water creature. Tower and Eddie are down, and I've lost contact with the rest of the squad. We need backup now! Now, damn it, now!
So this chapter is like Blast Pit or Power Up from the original game. More like Blast Pit than Power Up though. Your objective is to activate the valve and the gearbox to flush the toxic waste into the pit worm's nest. I was critically low on health here because Pit Drone's melee attacks hit really hard and I was being a complete dumbass and trying to pistol them. I ended up surviving, but only barely. Also, I will mention that this starting room looks like the trash compactor room from Star Wars. Hell, later on you even get to activate a trash compactor. Back to being on low health. 15 health? Did you know that I started this section with 100 health and 87 armor and lost all of that in about 2 minutes? As I said earlier, don't let the Pit Drone's melee attack get you. It really hurts. After activating the valve and the gearbox, I'm not gonna go into that, you flush the toxic waste and the pit worm is dead. Then the bridge can be extended and you can finally cross. This chapter and the next one do not fuck around. These next two chapters are the equivalent to surface tension. If you aren't prepared, these next chapters will be your worst nightmare. This is when Op 4 actually gets hard. See here how I'm on 5 health at the beginning? Don't worry, it's normal to be below 25 health at all times. You actually get the sniper rifle here, or rather, I get the sniper rifle here. It's amazing and it reliably one-shots the Black Ops. It's a great tool. During these next two chapters, I will be showcasing some certain fights, since they can be very intense. This is one of the best examples of how you need to be constantly switching weapons in order to stay alive. Now I can also showcase the secondary feature of the Alt F4 cannon, which is where it takes you to Zen in a healing pool area. Or it kills you, however most of the time you get the healing pool. Initially I used this to teleport to Zen, however I immediately got my ass handed to me by the Voltigors lurking in the sewer that I just so happened to teleport into by accident. Okay, so I had a few deaths to Voltigors here since I'm not the best at avoiding their projectiles sometimes. So I get through the Voltigors with 32 health and then comes my absolute least favorite part of the entire game. This section with the infinitely spawning pit drones that only stop spawning after flicking a couple of switches. However, to activate them, you have to go into the pit drone's line of fire, which on 32 health can be devastating. I do die here because the section is BS. However, I make it through by the skin of my teeth and then have to face more goddamn Voltigors. And a few tiny baby Voltigors that I wouldn't kill normally. However, in a previous playthrough I was actually killed by one. So now I just don't trust them and rather just kill them all before they kill me. Hey look, Marines! I hope that they help me with the next combat section. Nah, of course they all pretty much die immediately. This next section was one of the hardest in the game, and amazingly, I only die once. The medic is useful before this section since he heals me to 100 health. The best way to deal with the upcoming large battles is to take them slowly. Very, very slowly. If you don't, then you will die. Also use the sniper rifle on the shock troopers. If you hit their eyes, they die instantly. Hey look, a Gargantua I can kill with explosives. Chalk up another death to picking the wrong side of the cliff to grapple onto. So, we're almost done with Op 4. The only way I was able to finish game was to keep telling myself this even though I still had nearly 40 minutes left. Anyways, you meet up with more Marines and try to kill as many Black Ops as you can. That's pretty much the rest of Op 4 in a short sentence. Kill Black Ops and other aliens. Using this rocket launcher device is even crappier than the airstrike one from OG Half-Life. At this point in the game, I'm just getting tired of the endless Race X monsters and the Black Ops. I just want this to end. Chalk up another 2 deaths to this damn helicopter. So this chapter is called The Package, and Adrian didn't know why until some helpful lines from Otis.
Now don't hurt me, and I'll tell you a secret. I've been hiding up here listening. These Black Ops have some sort of bomb. I think they're planning on blowing up the base. Now why do you think they would do such a thing?
I think we should handle this with caution.
One false move and this whole facility. You just keep your eyes open. There's still some targets running around up there.
There, now it's time for the final part of Op 4. Here's the final showdown with Race X and the Black Ops. I swear, this elevator makes me feel like that part at the end of Aliens where Ripley is descending. Just makes me feel like I'm descending into unknown territory. There are tons of Black Ops in the first area and the next few. Not actually sure what killed me here since the explosion came from the wall. I swear nothing was shot. Although I think it was one of the Black Ops SMG grenades. Whatever, I'll have my revenge on them. I try to skip past the final room with all the Race X creatures and the Black Ops fighting each other. It does not go well. Okay, so patience is key, and I finally get to this part, the final part of Op 4. The final boss. The final boss is not hard at all. Shoot both of its eyes, then its purple thing, then kill the enemy it spawns, rinse and repeat. However, a strange thing happened during my playthrough this time. That was a waste. Oh my god, am I stuck? You have got to be serious! Get out! So I had to fight the boss all over again, and I was really pissed at Gearbox during this section, as you could probably hear me complaining during the footage. After it is defeated, you get a similar ending to that of original Half-Life. So the G-Man shows up and decides to keep you in this tram for all of eternity until he needs you again. At least Adrian can't die. This is the most annoying part of the game. I want to see more of poor old mate Adrian Shepard. However, if this is my biggest complaint about Op 4, then that means that this game is really worth checking out. All I can say is, there's no way that Blue Shift could live up to this. And it does not. Before I move on to Blue Shift though, I'll let my producer give some input on Op 4. Yeah, say hello again to Ben55K.
So you're playing as the opposing force. That's pretty cool. These new enemies though really need to chill. The new Gen Z aliens are not very high. They include the redacted drones, the ass trapper, the Voligator, and there are lots of black ops. Personally, Opposing Force is kind of pretty epic, and it has the best of Half-Life. Crossbow is not that good anymore, which kind of sucks, and the new weapons added are pretty dog water. Anyway, let's do and talk about the bluey blues and Blue Shift.
So, like many others, I agree that Opposing Force is far superior to Blue Shift. Blue Shift only really added the HD model pack, which I'll be using since my eyes like to bleed. The main complaint about Blue Shift is that it not only removed the Opposing Force weapons, it also removed some of the weapons that were required in the original Half-Life. While this is annoying about Blue Shift, I don't think it's quite as big of a deal. My problem is when these people say this claim to Blue Shift and then don't apply the same principle to Half-Life 2. In the weapons department, Blue Shift does, at least for me, beat out Half-Life 2. Mainly because the weapons in Blue Shift, while the same as the ones from Half-Life, at least give you a decent amount of ammo for them. I think my biggest complaint for Blue Shift is that it's really short. So for a short burst of Half-Life, Blue Shift is perfect. However, for selling this for $5, it really is not worth it. Wait till the Steam sale. Interesting bit of history about Blue Shift. It was initially going to be included with the Sega Dreamcast port of Half-Life. You might be asking, Sega Dreamcast ports? Did that ever happen? No, it got cancelled. Rather than let this go to waste, it was then released as a commercial product in 2001. It was again made by Gearbox Software. If you want to experience these two expansions in the best possible way, play Blue Shift first. That way you won't be as disappointed, rather than playing Op4 first and then seeing the tiny arsenal that Barney gets. With all that said, I'm ready to wrap up Classic Half-Life for now, after I get trained, of course. Okay, so this training course is literally the same as the original one with a few changes. The main difference being that Barney is a hologram instead of Gina Cross. The other main difference is that the game introduces you to the new mechanic, which is the armor system. Black Mesa doesn't give the security staff HEV or PCV suits. They get basic armor. This makes hard so much easier since the armor it gives doesn't change based on the difficulty. So that means that you can pick up 60 armor per armor pickup. Odd choice, but I like it since it makes Blue Shift the easiest campaign so far. The other thing that is different is how the game takes away your weapons before the end of the training. I think they learned from last time. Nothing too major has changed in the basic shooting, although if you don't have raw mouse input on, your mouse will have an aneurysm. This isn't a problem for me since I always have raw mouse input on. You are Security Guard Barney Calhoun. You are a normal security guard at Black Mesa before eventually being thrown into a hostile situation. Your only goal is to escape the facility and survive. There's another goal, but I'll get to that later. Of course, this expansion opens up with a tram ride. However, there are a lot more sights to see along the way, including Gordon Freeman. When you reach your destination, you get locked out long enough to see Gordon pass by. This is a reference to the original game when you see Barney locked out and banging on the door in the original tram ride. Cool reference, even though it makes future lines make less sense.
About that beer I owed you.
Oh god, these models for Barney look so bad. I'm playing with the HD model pack I mentioned earlier, since they were released along with Blue Shift. Basically, I want your eyes to suffer, for scientific purposes.
Calhoun, you know you can't go on duty without your sidearm and uniform.
Fine. Gotta go get my pistol and get some shots in, then find my armor and find out that Barney is a conspiracy theorist.
Theoretically. You smelled something burning?
I can't really tell.
Right. Let's try this.
Ah! Whoa! Whoa.
Not sure what the point of this is, but it looks cool and I'm glad he didn't die. However, these dicks in the elevator can fuck right off. Just shoot the elevator, that works. I will admit that seeing all the destruction caused by the resonance cascade is probably the best part of Blue Shift. This starting area has way too many boxes. Also, how did I survive when this dude got fucking squashed? Anyway, there's nothing useful in these boxes except ammo, and it's pretty fun to break just a ton of boxes. I like to think that this part was put in for some soothing gameplay to start off Blue Shift. Like you're being put in a room and your only goal is to destroy all the boxes. There's even a mod for Half-Life 2 called Too Many Crates that is just breaking boxes. It's fun and it's actually stress relieving. This first part of Blue Shift mainly consists of going through a sewer system. In Blue Shift you don't encounter many of the creatures from the race X. In fact, you don't encounter any, which, while sad, is also a godsend, since that means that this campaign is also made even easier. I think that the hardest enemy Bonner encounters may be a bull squid or the HECU grunts. Knowing that Blue Shift is the easiest, it doesn't make any of the chapters bad. They could just get boring shooting the same low-tier enemies over and over again. Also, how does the scientist just so happen to think that the Marines aren't there to save them?
Calhoun, how did you get through the power lock? Well, it doesn't matter. The only other way out of here is through the canal. If you do make it to the surface, don't tell anyone I'm down here. I think they're trying to kill us all. Now get out of here. The canal is where you want to be.
Most of the chapter is just solving gearbox lift puzzles like going through the sewer that I mentioned earlier. Hey look, a ladder, I'll just go down it. Oh, never mind. I actually like the HD shotgun model since it sounds incredibly beefy, as all shotguns should. Okay, so the explosive blew up these grinding box machine thing, don't question it. Then you see a couple Marines throwing bodies into the sewer and they give you insight into something.
These civvies are getting heavy.
Yeah, why are we on disposal duty anyway? Just because Shepard's team didn't make what we have to do to crap jobs? Well, that's tough.
This chapter mostly takes place in, of course, the freight yard. Ah, the Magnum, my old friend. Gone is the Desert Eagle. Here at last is the most powerful handgun in the world. I die again in the other sewer area because I got stuck on an edge. Again. This time I don't have any explosives, so I have to wait it out. Man, Gearbox sure loves to put head crabs and vents in the most inconvenient places. Thanks, Randy. I don't know if that was actually Randy Pitchford, but I'll still blame him for this game's shortcomings anyway, as well as future Gearbox games, since everyone loves a good scapegoat. Alright, the military shows up, finally. I was getting bored, but now I can actually sweat a little in combat. So the basic gist now is that this dude, Harold, tells you to go find Dr. Dr. Rosenberg, and he should be able to help you escape. The search is on. The next section will show you why I absolutely hate weapon auto switch. Also, quick note, the first two train cars with the scientists in them are not the train cars with Dr. Rosenberg. No, you have to search harder. This next encounter with the Marines can be brutal since they swarm you. However, I've acquired a turret, so it's hasta la vista, babies. A tank part will really spice things up. Oh look, there's a tank. Hey look, I died again, this time from a shotgun blast. So now I finally have located Dr. Rosenberg, and he was inside of a train? Why? I don't know. This isn't actually explained in the game, so let's just roll with it. You know what would spice this up? An escort mission. Alright, so some story stuff happens, blah blah blah. In summary, I have to line it teleported on Zen. Yes, Zen is back. And it's actually not shit this time. This is probably the best version of Zen until Black Mesa. It's very concise and you can get through it all really quickly. The highest enemy you'll meet is a bull squid or maybe the alien controllers. The first part is annoying though, since you have to go through a bunch of small areas, kind of like vents. It's very easy to get lost in them. Chalk up another 2 deaths to me sucking at platforming again. I will mention that I did pause my footage here for about 20 minutes so that I could go eat something. What? I was hungry. It was like 9 AM in the morning. Personally, this waterfall part with the red liquid is the best Zen has looked so far. I mentioned earlier that I think the only better version of Zen is Black Mesa, which is my own opinion. However, lengthwise, Black Mesa Zen just goes on for far too long compared to the short burst in Blue Shift. Most of the other parts in Zen are not worth mentioning. Basically, I get the teleporter working. Yay! Okay, so Barney now has to get a power cell charge since the last power cell was only just enough to teleport you back to Zen. Hey look, the military's here. Again. They aren't much of a threat. However, they do whittle my health down in one section, so I have to resort to the old soda machine health regen trick. You get to solve another barrel puzzle where you flush coolant and push barrels. It's tedious and not really fun. You only need to push these barrels so that you can platform over them to get these 2 power units turned on. Alright, so I just glossed over a lot of marine fights in this last section since most of them are standard shoot at them until they die. There are a few more alien encounters near the end of the barrel section, most notably this one where an alien grunt and 2 Vortigons spawn in. If unprepared, this one can be a little bit difficult. If prepared though, you can just shoot grenades at them. Then comes a pretty cool set piece, the part where you see aliens attacking marines. The difference here being that this is happening on the other side of a massive gap. Oh hi Barney. Sorry I couldn't help you out earlier, I was on the other side of a barrier. Alright, power cell charged and sent back up. Nothing can possibly go wrong now. This last part of Blue Shift is probably the worst ending to any Half-Life game, other than Episode 1. The reason being that there's no final boss. You just wait for a teleporter to charge up and send the scientist home. That's it. Okay, but a coolant line ruptures and I actually fail here because the wheel just wouldn't turn after I killed the 2 hound eyes.
You've taken too long. The reflection rotors are burning. I can't shut it down. Run!
The quote-unquote final boss is a few marines which I saved up my grenades for. It's a pitiful attempt at an ending. That being said, is the only ending where someone actually makes it out alive, even though Barney goes through some weird teleporting thing. Oh hi Gordon. And that is Blue Shift.
We made it, Mr. Calhoun. We made it.
Well, these Gearbox expansions were definitely an interesting thing to revisit. It's not often that games nowadays have expansion packs. I will have to say that these are solid Half-Life entries, with Opposing Force being by far the better of the 2. The way I like to think about them is that Opposing Force did Half-Life in about half the time. Blue Shift did Half-Life but with half of the weapons and gameplay features. This is why, for the expansions, their glass is only half full. For what it's worth, it's an excuse to play more Half-Life. What more of a reason do you need? Go play Blue Shift and Op 4, and if you've already played them, why not check them out again? Might be worth your time to invest in another replay. It was definitely worth my time. Alright, another video is done. Now, what to do next? Hello?
I've got a game for you.
What is it?
It's a game that you've been sending hate to a lot throughout this video. I'm of course talking about...
Let me just stop you right there. I'm not doing a video on... kill me? Oh, no! Ah.